sometimes we refer those methods as verbs to indicate the desired action to be performed on the identified resources, right? So this line is referring these verbs, HTTP verbs that we have already seen: post, get, put, and delete. And what are the similarity with CRUD operation, we will see. And it is saying that in RESTful services, the most commonly used HTTP verbs are post, get, put, and delete. And these correspond to create, read, update, and delete CRUD operations. I think some of you might aware of the CRUD operation. When we look into the database operations, there are every database, when we create tables or the database infrastructures, we need to keep these four uh, terminologies, four operations in our mind, that we should create a database where we can create anything, we can read from that database very easily, we can update or replace anything from that database on that database, and we can delete something. Okay, so we need to make this much robust database so that we can do these operations easily. There should be not cumbersome process to do these operations. So we need, these are the first basic operation that we need to be having a concern about in our mind to create a database, right? And similarly, when we are working with the APIs, when we are calling APIs with these HTTP methods, we are also performing one of these actions, either post, get, put, delete. So when we are just authentication using a logon API, we are using post method. And in post method base, we are giving some data to the API, so that using that data, that REST API infrastructure or that product or tool understand around that data and give us the required result. Same kind of thing, same thing goes with other S3 verbs, like in the get. In the get also, we did not give anything, or might be in some cases we are giving minimum things on the body. Okay, but in the results we are giving a large amount of data, or the data whatever the required or whatever the desired as per the API, right? Like in the get all safe, we are getting all the safe, but we can also limit the things, we can also apply the filters on the get methods. Same thing, if we want to change the name of the safe, you want to change the name of the user, you want to update something into the CyberArk, we need to use the put method. And delete is simple, everybody can understand. You want to delete something, we need to require permission, and we can use these HTTP verb, delete HTTP verb, as a with the request. Okay, and these method, where it goes with the header of the API call. So in the API call, what are the primary things, what are the things that we need to understand? URL, headers, in the header we have HTTP verb or HTTP method. In the header we have authorization, and in the header we have parameters uh, other parameters that we need to include. So most of them are general parameters, but authentication and these HTTP methods that we need to look at out. And then we need to see the body, what kind of data we need to attach or we need to include with that API, with that URL, so that we get the desired results, right? So this is about HTTP requests. Now when we are giving a data to anything, we need to give the data in a format. We cannot just write the data as whatever comes into our mind, like after commas and the colons, and we need to give the data in a format so that we also can understand, and whoever the third party or the product we are giving the data, they also can understand. So there would be a format. So for that we are using JSON format. Most of the times we can convert this JSON format into the Excel, we can convert this JSON format into the text. So that is a separate part, that we can convert data into different formats between using different methods. But right now we are mostly focused on the JSON based format to represent any data. And the full form is JavaScript object notation. When JavaScript language come into the picture, so this will be an format mostly used into the software industry because it's simple to read and understandable by softwares, languages, codes, and the human itself, right? So it's an open standard file format that uses human readable text to transmit data objects consisting of attribute value pairs or key value pairs. So all the data you can see into the curly brackets is in the JSON format, and it is in the key value pairs. One key value pair, then comma, other key value pair, then comma, and then if you want to make it more detailed, more extensive. So in one key, you can create other multiple sub keys with the values. So like in the address field, we have street address, city, state, and postal code into the address itself, right? And each sub key has the value. So we can make the letters, deep letters, or one word I'm forgetting. We can create the letter kind of architecture into the JSON format. So like in the city also, if we have two cities, we want to give an optional city. If you want to go give the, if we have an address, mobile number or contact information, if you want to go the alternative contact information in the contact itself, so we can use two sub keys into the contact itself. So we can make a ladder into the format. And if you see into the data, like when we getting the members information of a particular safe, with the members we are getting so much information, like the level of permission, okay, when the membership will expire, what is the date of creation, all the things that CyberArk defines into the backend. When we get this information, we can see into the results, into this ladder information in this ladder architecture by keys, then sub keys, then sub keys, and we can see the values, and we can use these values, we can store these values, and how to parse. Okay, like if I want, like I get this result and I only want this postal code, how I can get this postal code from that result, we will see that also. So like first we will go to the, in this JSON format, then we will go to the address, then we will take the value of this postal code. Likewise, if there are other deeper values are present into the result, then we can how we can fetch them. And let's assume we have, sorry, let's assume we have more than 100 of results into a single result, 100 of values. So how to fetch them, how to loop them, that also we will see into our examples, right? And when we look into body parameters, we have seen the format, but we need to understand the mandatory and optional parameters. And same thing goes with any other programming language. When we are calling any function in any programming language, we need to see, or we need to understand what are the mandatory parameters and what are the optional parameters. For the mandatory parameters, as it called as it suggests, we need to include those parameters in any cost, and anyhow we need to we need to include them at least. And for the optional parameters, whatever is required, we can include or not include, right? So here in our example for logon, we include username and the password, but the new password is the when when we use this new password, when we want to update the password of a user, then we can include it. Same goes with this fourth one, concrete session. If we want to like set up this parameter to true to enable the user to open multiple connection session simultaneously, up to 300 correct concurrent session are supported by CyberArk. And then we need to give this concurrent session as a key, and value will be true. But by default, if you are not including, the by default is value is false. For optional parameters, architectural level or the backend level, some default values is already defined. Like for new password, it is empty. For concurrent session, it's false. So optional parameter is already defined, but when you will not define it, their default value is already picked up. Okay, but mandatory parameters, if some of like any API has three mandatory parameters, and if we forgot to include one of them, so it will not work, the API will not work, it will throw some error, right? Any question till this point with body parameters and the mandatory and optional parameters or the requests? Okay, we don't have anything, any confusion around it, then we can now, after calling an API, when we see the URL, when we see the HTTP methods, when we see the body parameters, authorization, when we see all these input things, what will be the output that we need to understand? Okay, so in the output, we will get a result in a JSON format, we will get a data, but we also need to understand these HTTPS responses. So after each API call, we get a code with associated with the response, right? And if we get 200 as a response code, then it means we are in the success phase. The request succeeded. The actual response will depend on the request method used. So whatever you requested, you will get the result. Okay, after code 200. And as per these codings, we can see created, bad request, unauthorized, forbidden, not found, conflict, server error. Mostly we got these three: 400, 401, 403. So this 401 and 403 is for the authentication. Like if your authentication token is failed, if you don't have any certificate, that is like between your, from which location you are calling the API with the server. If you don't have any uh, SSL certificate, or you don't have any trust between these two data points, between these two, client and server, then you will get either unauthorized or the forbidden, where server is receiving the request, but authentication is not fulfilling, right? And if you are not adding the authentication, it might be the case that you call the API but you did not include the access token to it, then you will get an unauthorized error, and that code will be 401. And if you made some request to the server and you misplaced something, either you misplaced some parameters, okay, misplaced some information, and server is not able to uh, find it out or able to understand, then you will get a bad request, right? So this kind of errors, when we get, we can understand from this chart. It's available on online, and we need to then resolve accordingly, right? So like you might be some API you are using and it is not there in the architecture, so it will be 404, right? If any conflict or the internal server error, then 500, 409 and 500. So in RESTful services, the responses are standard HTTP return codes. So we will get the code, and then we will get this. They will get a message also, like okay, with 200 we get an okay message. For 401 and 403 we get unauthorized and the forbidden messages, and some with some explanation also, right? So according to the code, we get a message, and for 200 is a success message. Other else are little bit kind of error. I think 201 is also a success where we create something new. But I see mostly 200. I didn't see 201, but yeah. Okay. And when we come from API to the CyberArk, so this is called as PaaS Web Services API. And when we install the PWA, we can directly use these web-based APIs. Okay, like CyberArk APIs we can directly use. So here it is written that PaaS Web Services API is a set of REST-based calls that allows user to develop custom interaction with the vault to automate business process. Like same thing we are discussing from the point, from the starting point. If we have any kind of automation request, any business process that we need to automate, any process that is used by clients, users, admins, BU teams, and any other teams as a daily basis, and they are taking time of resources, we can automate those process, giving some time to automate, and that can be automate with the interaction, custom interaction with the vault. Obviously, why vault? Because vault has the data. And what APIs will do? API is the method to communicate with the database, and where database is residing, it is residing in the vault. So we need to communicate with the vault to get the data. to fetch the data, to replace the data, to delete the data. So we need to connect with the vault. Example is integrating the process of provisioning a new service account with automatic provisioning of the new service account and permission in the vault. So after provisioning also, we need to give the permissions. If we are creating a safe, we need to add the members, and while we are adding the members, we need to give the permissions also. With a different level of permission, we need to define everything as an automated process, right? So any confusion till here with the basic things of APIs?
No.
Okay, so before wrapping up this theory session, we can see a flow of adding an account, okay, and flow of adding a user, or we can say how we need to curate, create a HTTP request for adding a user, what kind of parameters or what kind of URL. We already seen into the postman, we already seen in the documentation, but let's see it again. Okay, and this is also a Swagger example. Yeah, this is a postman example we can see. So yeah, let's see. We need to add an account. We can add it with the default methods, either by the PWA, either by the uh, bulk upload methods, either by the PEU. Okay, but you want to create a script, okay, to onboard an account. So what kind of flow you need to use, or you need to think about it is, you need to first log in into the vault, right? After login, you will be getting a session token. When you successfully log in, then you will get an access token. Using that access token, when you again call the add account API, and after successful run of this API, you will be successfully adding an account with the parameters you have defined into the body of that API, right? So this will be the flow for adding an account. There will be two APIs to run for you for this particular task. First is to authentication to generate the access token. Second is adding the account. And same is written here. User first authenticates to the vault using the logon method, returning a session token to be used in subsequent web services calls. And user invokes the add account method to add a credential using the session token received from the logon activity. And same we can see, client would be either our postman, client would be either our PowerShell script, either it will be CMD, either it would be a Python based uh, script which is running from a command prompt or any other uh, server or likewise. So client would be like this, and it request will go through PWA, and we will communicate to the vault. Obviously, everything we are from the PWA also we are communicating to the vault. So first we are logging. After success, we are getting 200 as a response, HTTP response, and we are getting an access token. Then using that access token, we're including that token into the next API, that is add account, and we are uh, after successful message, and that is 201 to create something onto the database, we are getting this response code, and we are able to successfully able to add that account into the CyberArk, right? And this is HTTP request for adding the user. But if we are adding the account, what are the parameters? Let's look into the documentation. Okay. Uh, I need to go to account section. Then I go to the add account section, and I'm opening one second generation API. Here you can see first the URL. Password vault API accounts is the change is here only. After API, this is the change. Then method would be post. Content type will be application ingestion. Then parameter is in the header itself. We need to give the authorization. That will be the access token. And these are the body parameters that we need to define, like name, address, username, platform ID, safe name, secret type, secret, and all others. Okay. And then we need to see what are the mandatory parameters. Right now, it is not defined in this description. What are the mandatory parameters? So you need to test it out. Either you can do it in two ways. Either you can go through manual process first, that while adding an account, what are the mandatory parameters that we need to use? Okay. And using those parameters, we can define it here, and then uh, we can try this API and see if that's getting our result, that is creating a account or adding an account into CyberArk or not. And then we need to look it into these parameters, that what is if there is an error or not, and if something is remaining to add. Okay. And I think for some of them it's written that mandatory is not a required, or yeah, for platform ID you can see it's mandatory. For safe name is mandatory, but for others it's not written as mandatory. But we need to look at it out. What are the parameters that we need to use? And these are the secret management parameters also, but we can include all the parameters into the body, right? And names are given as a key. These will be keys, and values we need to define according to the parameter. If it's a Boolean parameters, if the parameter is type is Boolean, then we need to define true or false. And if the parameter type is string, then we need to give a string into curly brackets. Okay. I think this is the two type of thing. And for there is a parameter called membership expiry, where we need to give the number. So string and Boolean are the mostly used type of uh, data type of the parameters. So we need to either give the string, either we need to give the true false. So these are the like three kind of parameters we need to define. We can define into the add account. One is basic one. Second is secret management parameters, like automatic management field, manual, reason, and all. And then third type is remote machine access parameters. These are, I think, optional when we are adding the account. These are the optional parameters we can add into our body also. And when we successfully run the API, after when we are getting 201 as a result, this will be our result. And in the result, we will see the name, address, and all the things. Whatever we give into the body, something is something that API, after calling the API, something PWA is returning to us, and we can see what we have created. Okay. And for uh, for each kind of, or for different API, we are getting different results. So right now we are getting this kind of result after adding an account, and here we can see something should be added, something extra should be added, what we have not given. So like here itself, the one is the parameter is ID, the ID of account. We didn't give any ID of the account, but in the results we can see the ID, name, address, platform ID, safe name, secret. It's not written here, but in the results we will get it, the ID of the account, because in CyberArk, every object, either it is account, either it is user, either it is safe, everything is defined with an ID. It is not defined with the name. And when you create, or when you play with the APIs with user provisioning, you will see then every user is defined with an ID. And if you want to work with that user, you need to first look at the ID of that user. Okay, so it would be a number, a unique number for every user, for every safe, for every object into the CyberArk. There is a unique number that is defined into the backend of the CyberArk. And when we want to use that user or any safe, we need to use that number. So that would be the ID. So after creating anything, any role, any safe, any group, any account, there would be an ID that is assigned to, that is related, or that is assigned to that object. Okay. So this would be adding an account, flow of adding an account, and a little bit understanding of adding an account into the CyberArk. And same thing, if we go into more detail, if we want to add a user into a safe, okay. So these are the four things that we have already discussed. One is URL, one is HTTP verb or HTTP method, one is second is headers. So third one is headers, where there are two main things that we need to define is content type. That would be same for each API, JSON/application, and one is authorization. In the authorization, we need to give the authentication token or session token. And in the body part, for adding a user, what we need to define is username, the password, email, first name, last name, date, and all other. These are not the all, but we can see into the documentation what are the all parameters, what are the mandatory parameters that we need to define. Okay. And also we can define the permission level in itself, right? If we open the documentation of adding a user into the CyberArk, let me see. It's about accounts. But if I go to the user management, users, and adding a user, but I think this is not adding a user into the safe, it's adding a user into CyberArk. And these are the body parameters that we can use, from mobile number to username to expiry date, and uh, all other details, business details and work details, and other uh, related information that we can fetch from any other third party tool, and we can fill it here, or we can just fill it from Excel sheet. We can use Excel sheet also, and we can create a user. And if I go to save section again, and if I see the members, adding a safe member, where you will see the permission level also. You can see we need to give the member name. We need to give where we need to search this ac- account or this user, either it is Vault or some third party tool, whatever integrated with the CyberArk. Then expiration date, it is optional parameter, but we can give the membership expiration date. Then we need to give the permission. So these are the same permission written here. So whatever we can define as a read only, then we can give only 3 as a true, a use account retrieve and list as a true. And what we can do customization here on the permission level, and we can see what are the mandatory, what are the optional parameters, and then we can add a member. And after adding a member, what kind of result we will get is, we will get again safe name, safe URL ID, safe number, then we get a member ID. That is what I want to focus on is member ID, and there is a safe number. So my point of focus is everything, every object into the CyberArk in the backend of infrastructure is defined by a ID. In safe, there is a number, there is ID. For member also, there is ID. So everything is defined with a unique code. Member ID, the vault user ID, domain user ID, or group ID of the safe number, and it would be an integer. And same goes with the safe number, right? So this is about adding a user. This is about adding an account. And then if you want to look into the Postman, we already see one example. Here also you can see we need to define URL, HTTP method, headers, authorization and the content type. We need to define the body. Okay. And then when we click on the send button, we will get this result. If it is successful, 201 or 200, right? Yeah. So this is it for the theory today. This is it what that I want to discuss as an over